Today I'm going to share the best advice I received from a mentor and the 7 ways I've benefited from that advice throughout my creative journey. Hi, I'm Paul from Studio Centrale, and this is the Humble Creative Podcast. So let's get right into the advice. It came from a well-respected scientist, Aki Uhlenbeck at the University of Illinois. I was completing my postgraduate training. I was about to start my own research lab as a new university professor in Canada. And Aki shared with me the advice he'd received from his mentor at that same point in his career that he felt was the most useful advice he'd ever got. And the advice was this. It was, you will always have more ideas than you can possibly work on. Now you might be thinking, that seems rather obvious. Why is that such great advice? Well, for me, it really opened up a pathway to becoming that research scientist. It provided a key that I think is really important for creatives to take on board and understand so that they're comfortable in how their creative life develops. So I want to break this down first, and then I'm going to talk about the 7 ways my own creative life has benefited from knowing, understanding, and following this advice. So let's break this down. Now, when I was starting my own research lab, basically I was opening a small business. In order to do research at a university, I had to attract research grants, I had to attract and train employees, and I had to make the customers, the grant agencies, happy about the product that my lab produced, the scientific results. So let's pretend that you are the CEO of u.creative.inc. What are the 3 implications of this advice? The first is it's okay and preferable to have lots of ideas. As CEO, you're in charge of brainstorming. I think for most creatives, ideation is not usually a problem. If anything, the problem is that you have too many ideas. You can't possibly work on them all. The second implication of this advice is that you need to understand the limits of your resources. And when I talk about resources, as a CEO for a company, that might be the size of the workforce, how many engineers and designers you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The budget. The resources for you primarily are your mental health, your physical health, and the time that you have available to work on creative projects. So you have to understand those limits and make decisions about how you're going to use those resources to maximum benefit, if you will. So as CEO, you can't overextend the limits of your resources. And as a creative, you don't want to burn out mentally, physically, or spend more money or more time than you reasonably have. And then the third implication is you need to take a hard look at your list of ideas and choose the one that provides the most benefit to you as a creative in that moment, especially one that is either hard or scares you. That's almost always a sign that it's something that's really going to pay off, potentially. At least that's what I found. I think perhaps you've already experienced that as well. So just to complete our analogy to being the CEO, CEOs have to make the hard decisions. They gather all the information in brainstorming. They then take a look at the resources that are available, and then they have to choose between the different ideas. Now, one thing I'll say is that because you make a choice, don't throw away your other ideas. It's possible that after you've worked on this choice, you come to a point in where further experiments to try and get to something that satisfies you don't work out. And at that time, you have to make the decision. Should I continue, or is this time to go back to my list and find the next thing? What I found over my somewhat long life is that my creativity in general, and in particular, when I moved to art, photography, music, video, that the benefits continued to accrue, and I continued to feel good about how I was making the choices that I was making. Okay, so at the start, I promised that I would share 7 benefits that I've experienced from following this advice in my creative journey. So let's go through them now. First is, it encourages me always to focus on what is most important. This is huge. It takes away that uneasy feeling that, is this worth it? Should I even be doing this? It just doesn't feel right. It just gave me that inner confidence that I knew that I was making wise decisions about what I was going to work on. For example, doing this podcast. I feel confident about doing this podcast because I took a long, hard look at my list of ideas for this channel, and this was the one that I wanted to pursue. How about number 2? It discourages me from going for the low-hanging fruit. And I think this is also important. Most creatives cannot do their creative thing full time. It's really hard to do that. I'm confident that I'm not just treading water or just working on the easier things, the ones that bring low levels of satisfaction. So the third benefit, it frees me from feeling guilty that I'm not doing more. And that's because I understand what my limits are. And those limits change over time. So the fourth benefit, it encourages me to constantly think up new ideas. That seems a little counterintuitive, but following the advice, I'm not just thinking up new ideas, I'm constantly evaluating them against the store of ideas that I already have. And what I've experienced, and I suspect what you have probably experienced from time to time, is an idea that you wrote in your notebook and that you were really excited about, but you didn't get around to doing for a few months or a year. When you go back to your notebook, you look at that idea and you think, that's not such a great idea. I think I'd rather work on something else. I'm glad that I got this advice because I don't think that thinking of ideas is where this ideation process ends. I'm very invested in always evaluating new ideas against the other ideas that I have that I haven't acted upon. And I think that's a really useful and valuable benefit. The fifth benefit is it eliminates the most common cause of artist block, at least for me, which is, I don't know what I'm going to work on. Sometimes you have that feeling because you actually don't have any ideas. Not having ideas is rarely the problem, or at least it has rarely been the problem for me. The larger problem is trying to pick an idea. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? What should I do? This advice has given me the tools to rarely be in that position. I've always got a pretty good idea of what I'm really excited about working on next. So that's a benefit from this advice that I've had as well. 2 more benefits to go. So number 6 is that I always choose quality over quantity because I recognize I can't work on everything. So I would rather work on the things that are more interesting to me or stretch me more or more challenging. And I've found that to be a great antidote to social media, to the constant, you've got to post, you've got to post, you've got to post consistently, and you should post every day. And It's impossible to produce quality day after day after day. You're not really challenging yourself, because part of challenging yourself means that you have a lot of failure that you learn from before you get to the true quality. So I found this benefit 6 to be tremendous, actually. And finally, benefit 7. It encourages me to recognize my accomplishments. I think that's the most important benefit I could ever possibly hope for. When I finish a project to my satisfaction, I, I know inherently that this is a significant accomplishment because I've chosen the harder thing to do. I've successfully navigated the limits of my resources, and I've chosen quality over quantity. So I hope this helps. I don't expect that this advice will necessarily resonate with everyone who watches this video, and you may or may not feel that some of the benefits that I've received from following this advice are benefits that you yourself would be interested in. But I do hope that you found one or two ideas here that resonate with you, or that are just things that you might want to try. Thank you for watching. I'm always very appreciative, particularly if you watched right to the end. If you didn't watch to the end, you don't know that I'm very appreciative, but I still am. I appreciate everyone who even clicks on the thumbnail and hangs in there for a bit of the introduction. If you have time and can leave a comment, maybe share some of your experience as a creative, I would very much appreciate it. And once again, thank you for watching, and there will be a new episode next week.